Signs of the last days of summer are everywhere, and now a lot of canning's been done. What do I do with it? Today I've got some ideas of how I incorporate my canned goods into the menus at our house. In today's video, I share my adventures as I pick some peppers, then pickle a mix of sweet and hot peppers for the mild at heart. Plums I turned into some addicting plum sauce. Salsa Verde that is a winner in my house, hands down. And what to do with that extra or the jar that didn't seal? Pantry items become dinner, like taco pie or something equally as popular. Relax and enjoy. Hi. You know, this morning I had to get busy picking some beans. They're starting to dry to the point that they're going to release the beans on the ground and set up a crop for next year. But I want to have the beans in my pantry, so I needed to get picking. So I'm glad you joined me out here in the garden and keep me company. So I'm going to focus on the beans and I'll just keep talking. So these are black turtle beans. These are good with salsa, enchiladas, tacos, soups, all kinds of Spanish, Mexican dishes. They are green when they're growing, and then they start turning a lighter color. And that is an indication that they're starting to get ripe, and they'll open up and dispel their beans onto the ground. But we want to harvest them. Yeah, there's a few things I need to get because I'm going to be doing some cherry chutney later when I get home. And I've got some jalapeno hot sauce I want to put up. And coming up is some chicken chile verde using the Salsa Verde I made. And also some chicken curry. Both of those are actual meals that you can serve right from your pantry when you want to in the wintertime. Or summertime, I suppose. Anytime, really. But those are the upcoming projects. So, anyway, I'm going to finish up these beans and get headed to the store, and I'll catch you in the kitchen. I've been trying to save summer since 2018 when I got this canning magazine from Better Homes and Garden. I finally made the fennel onion relish on page 49 of the magazine. Have you ever tried fennel? It's great for the digestion. Ends should be trimmed. That includes the fronds, and trim off the bottom of the bulb. The bulb needs to have the center core cut out. It's tough and bitter. I diced up the fennel and the onions in my chopper dicer and put them in a large stainless steel pot. Next, I zested a couple of lemons and then juiced them. I measured the dry ingredients, and following the directions, I canned this, and I ended up with 6 half-pint jars. Oh my gosh, I just discovered plum sauce, and how unbelievably good it is. I think I'm addicted. I got 4 pounds of organic plums in my first Azure standard order. I washed them up and had a few soft spots to cut out, but that's the case with any fresh fruit. I got together all the ingredients I would need and got the plums on the stove to cook down. I love the colors. They're so vibrant. The recipe calls for a hard boil over a medium-high heat in order to cook down the plums. I canned them in the water bath canner. I ended up with 6 half-pint jars. The plum sauce thickened into a sauce that looked like jelly in the pot. The kitchen isn't too messy, at least not yet. While I waited for the canner to come to a boil, I bagged up the fresh ginger I got in my azure order into snack bags and put those in a freezer-safe bag. The plum sauce was ready to be taken out of the canner by the time I finished bagging the ginger. I must admit, I taste tested the plum sauce a number of times. And you know what? Each time it got better. It was so good. Our tomatoes aren't quite ripe here in northern Michigan, usually between the 1st and the 17th of September, but the jalapenos keep coming on. The parsley looks pretty when it goes to seed. And the marigolds that are growing near the pepper plants, they aren't being eaten by the grasshoppers. Aren't they pretty? They're about hip high. The tomatillos are almost ready, and I can hardly wait to make some salsa verde with them. I'll only have enough to make half the recipe with my first harvest. Derby loves the garden. I love the way the sun shines through the horseradish in the early morning. And the cantaloupe and watermelon are taking over this section. As you can see, by Derby's shadow, he's right underfoot. Wow, the globe artichoke plant has developed, and it looks a lot more familiar now. The black turtle beans are almost ready. Look, my first blueberry. And the plant is still in the pot. And my first flower on my Japanese anemone plant. And the butterfly weed looks pretty in the early morning light. My Tulsi basil has never looked this good. I see some flowers starting to form. My ashwagandha is actually growing. This is a tomatillo flower. Then a balloon shape appears, and that'll be the husk of the mature tomatillo. Pick them before they turn yellow and start to lose flavor. It's been a challenge to keep the path clear between the tomatillos and the cucumbers. On the way back inside, I spot a zucchini flower. Wait. I see something inside. I look a little closer to see a squash bee pollinating the flower. And that smudge at the bottom of the steps on a lazy summer afternoon, I haul in a whopper of a zucchini. It's the biggest one yet. I feel like I'm grating zucchini in my sleep and I can't keep up. It's becoming a nightmare. I've got about 9 bags this time, and I already have about half a dozen in the freezer. I drained off a lot of juice. These will make great blueberry zucchini bread this winter. It's my special recipe. I make mini loaves and I freeze them. I swear next year I'm not planting any cucumbers. Of course, I'll forget by next spring. In the meantime, we made some dill relish from the Ball Complete Cookbook. My husband chopped with my gadget while I did the initial prep work. And it called for the cucumbers to be salted, and turmeric, too, for the soak. Later, after rinsing and draining, I made the brine. I cooked them per the recipe, and then canned them for the pantry. Now, what to do with some of the extra zesty zucchini relish? I made deviled eggs, and I used zesty zucchini relish instead of the usual cucumber relish. With that hint of horseradish, it gave them a kick we both liked. It was good, and I finished up that partial jar that was sitting in the fridge. Now it's time to harvest some Tulsi basil, also known as holy basil. I didn't want it to go to flower. I trimmed off the topmost leaves, and I dry them for tea. You see, honey supervises the operation poolside. I washed and laid it out to dry. And I ordered some organic vanilla beans from Azure, and it looks like just in time. One of my bottles was getting low. I split the bean lengthwise and then cut it in half to fit the bottle. I filled it with vodka and put it in a cool, dark place. I made the ginger garlic mustard recipe from the Complete Book of Home Preserving by Ball. I gathered all the ingredients and put the ginger and garlic on the stove to simmer for a few minutes. Then I strained it and soaked the mustard seeds for 2 hours in the liquid. In the meantime, we went out to the garden where my husband found a huge zucchini. I picked peppers. The harvest was mostly Jimmy Nardello's, purple Aurora peppers, and some Anaheims. Back in the kitchen, the mustard was ready to be finished up and canned. I got 4 4-ounce jars of mustard. No jalapenos in this recipe. First purple on the Aurora peppers. Later it will have yellow, orange, and finally red peppers. I chose a recipe from Pickles and Relishes, 150 recipes, apples to zucchini. I pickled the peppers, no salt, using a mix of hot and mild peppers. I chopped a lot of peppers. I think it was 12 cups total that I needed for the recipe. I love the mix of colors. The lovely green color of the peppers changes once it's canned. We'll be eating these later for dinner, so stay tuned. But first, let me show you my latest watercolor project. I painted a sheltie. Starting with the lightest colors in watercolor, it's different than working with oils or acrylics, where you start with dark and work to light. Well, anyways, I worked slowly into the darkest colors until I finished. Painting from the model I use for inspiration. This year, my garden's theme is salsa and Mexican foods, and I'm learning to love foods I've never tried before. Makes me want to dance. New to me this year was tomatillos and the roasted Salsa Verde recipe from the new Ball Canning Cookbook. I had plenty of jalapenos, but I only had 2 pounds of tomatillos for my first batch, which would make a half batch on the recipe. So I peeled the husks from the tomatillos and washed the sticky substance that naturally protects the fruit from the insects. I put them along with the onions, pepper, and garlic on a baking tray with parchment paper, stem side down, and the garlic in a separate dish since it only takes half the time. In the meantime, I juiced some limes, which are used for flavor. I chopped the cilantro, just picked from the garden, and I assembled the tools I'll need for the next step. I used my old blender, which is glass. Make sure your blender is safe to use with hot liquids. And I also don't want to blend peppers in my Ninja, so see you later. The lime juice and the cilantro are ready to be added in the blender. And the peppers need to cool to be de-seeded. Later recipes will include more heat, so I'm keeping my Salsa Verde mild. Everything gets put in the blender and pulsed until blended, and then heated for just a few minutes to meld the flavors. I ended up with 4 half-pint jars and some extra for dinner. This was from 2 pounds of tomatillos, which made half of the recipe. Remember dinner? I made a favorite dish even better. I used the Salsa Verde, pickled peppers, seasoned ground beef, and the Fiesta salsa, all canned this past week, for a quick prep taco pie. And I used up the broken tortilla chips left from the nachos made earlier. I topped it with Salsa Verde and served the Fiesta salsa on the side. And for dessert, honey spiced peaches with homemade vanilla ice cream. Thanks for joining me in my kitchen. And thanks for watching, where happiness is homemade.